Matthew Johnson lived under the crushing weight of a past that refused to leave him in peace. The name Rachel Collins evoked a storm of emotions. She was the woman who had transformed his life, bringing love and purpose, only to be tragically taken from him in a car accident while carrying their first child. Matthew, once carefree and selfish, especially towards women, now found himself haunted by these memories. He buried himself in work at a local refinery, where he was respected and successful. The modern office, filled with monitors and documents, was his refuge. The endless meetings, crucial decisions, and complex projects occupied his mind but could not silence the melancholic thoughts that always returned. On that particular day, Matthew had finished an especially exhausting meeting. He was leaving the refinery building, adjusting his jacket and loosening his tie. The sun was setting, casting long shadows across the street. He walked towards the parking lot when something unusual caught his eye. A little boy was rummaging through a trash can on the sidewalk, searching for something to eat. Matthew's heart tightened as he watched the scene. "This can't be happening," he murmured to himself, feeling a pang of empathy. "That could have been me years ago." Matthew approached cautiously, trying not to scare the boy. The boy, frail and in worn clothes, was pulling out food scraps with a skill that showed he was experienced at this. "Hey, kid," Matthew called out, his voice soft but firm. "Are you okay? Are you hungry?" The boy looked up, his large, dark eyes filled with mistrust. He hesitated for a moment before responding, holding tightly to a piece of moldy bread. I'm okay," said the boy, stepping back slightly. "Just looking for something to eat." "My name is Matthew. What's yours?" Matthew tried an encouraging smile. "Johnny," the boy replied, still cautious. "Johnny, where are your parents?" Matthew asked, though he already had an idea of the answer. Johnny lowered his gaze, shrugging his shoulders. "I live with my grandpa. He's not well, so I have to get food. Can I walk you home?" "I'd like to meet your grandpa," Matthew suggested, concerned. Johnny hesitated but eventually nodded. "Okay, but he doesn't like visitors much." The two walked together through increasingly dilapidated streets. Ruined houses, broken fences, and trash-strewn sidewalks formed the landscape. Matthew felt a knot in his stomach remembering his own past, how he and his family struggled to survive. Finally, they arrived at a rundown house. The peeling paint and broken windows told the story of years of neglect. Johnny pushed the creaking door open and entered, followed by Matthew. "Grandpa, I'm back," announced Johnny, his voice echoing in the empty room. Henry Miller, an elderly man with a tired appearance, was sitting in a chair with a bottle of alcohol beside him. His blurry and swollen eyes lifted to meet Matthew's. "Who are you?" Henry asked, his voice slurred by alcohol. "My name is Matthew Johnson. I found Johnny on the street and wanted to make sure he was okay," Matthew explained, trying not to overtly judge the situation. Henry snorted. "Johnny doesn't need charity. We're fine." Matthew looked around the house, seeing clear signs of neglect and extreme poverty. "I didn't come to judge, sir. Just wanted to help. Can I leave some groceries for you?" Henry hesitated, but eventually nodded. "If you want to, I won't say no." Matthew left and returned with bags of groceries he had bought on the way. Johnny watched, a mix of gratitude and shame on his young face. "Thank you, sir," said Johnny, with a shy smile. "Take care, kid." "And you too, Mr. Miller," said Matthew, feeling a weight lift off his shoulders as he did something good, albeit temporary. As he left the house, Matthew couldn't stop thinking about Johnny and his own childhood. He knew he couldn't just forget what he had seen. Fate would bring them together again, but Matthew did not yet know that. As he got into his car and started the engine, Matthew cast one last look at the dilapidated house, a sense of determination growing within him. And so, the story of Matthew and Johnny was just beginning. The next day, as Matthew drove to work, his mind was full of thoughts about Johnny. The image of the boy rummaging through the trash was a constant reminder of his own childhood and the struggles he faced to get where he was. Upon arriving at the office, he sat in his leather chair, but his concentration was scattered. During the morning meeting, he found himself wondering what Johnny was doing at that moment. After work, Matthew went to a nearby market and bought several bags of food and basic supplies. He also purchased some clothes for Johnny, imagining the boy would need new attire. Carrying the bags, he drove to the dilapidated house where Johnny lived. As he approached, he saw Johnny sitting on the porch, his eyes wide with surprise upon seeing him. "Hi, Johnny," said Matthew, getting out of the car with a smile. "I brought some things for you and your grandpa." "Hi, sir," Johnny replied timidly. "Thank you." Matthew entered the house, again struck by the smell of alcohol and the sight of the neglected environment. Henry was sitting in the same chair, the bottle of alcohol beside him. "Hello, Mr. Miller," Matthew greeted. "I brought some things for you." Henry raised his head and looked at Matthew with suspicion. "You're persistent, aren't you?" "I just want to help," Matthew replied, placing the bags on the floor. "Johnny deserves more than this." "I do what I can," Henry grumbled, his voice hoarse. "But thank you." Johnny, visibly excited, began to pull items from the bags. "Look, Grandpa, he brought real food." Matthew watched with a smile as Johnny showed each item to Henry, who nodded in approval. Matthew felt a twinge of satisfaction seeing the sparkle in the boy's eyes. "Johnny, how are you doing in school?" Matthew asked, trying to start a conversation. I don't go to school much," Johnny confessed hesitantly. "Sometimes I have to stay here and take care of Grandpa." Matthew felt a pang in his heart. "That's not right. You need to study, have a better future." Henry sighed heavily. "I know. But it's hard. I try, but, well, you can see how it is." The reality of that house was a constant reminder of the difficulties Matthew had overcome. He knew he needed to do more than just bring food. Johnny deserved a chance at a better life. In the following days, Matthew continued to visit Johnny and Henry, bringing more supplies and sometimes spending time with Johnny, helping him with homework and playing with him in the yard. Each visit reinforced to Matthew that Johnny needed more than he and Henry could offer. On one of these visits, while Johnny was at school, Matthew sat with Henry in the small living room. "Mr. Miller, I want to talk to you about Johnny," Matthew began seriously. "He needs more than we can provide for him here." Henry looked at Matthew, his eyes tired and sad. "I know that. But what do you suggest?" Matthew took a deep breath. "I would like to obtain temporary custody of Johnny. I want him to come live with me. I will ensure he has a good education, food, and a healthy environment to grow up in." Henry was silent for a long moment, looking at the empty bottle in his hands. "I love my grandson," he finally said. "But you're right. He deserves more than this. If you can give him a better life, then I agree." Matthew nodded, feeling a mix of relief and responsibility. "Thank you, Mr. Miller. I'll do everything I can to take good care of him." With Henry's approval, Matthew sought his lawyers to discuss the necessary steps to obtain temporary custody of Johnny. The lawyers explained that it would be a complicated process, but possible. Matthew was determined to go ahead. Unfortunately, Henry's health deteriorated rapidly. He passed away a few weeks later, leaving Johnny devastated. Matthew was there to comfort the boy, promising to take care of him. "You'll be okay, Johnny," said Matthew, embracing the boy. "I'll take care of you. We'll do this together." With Henry deceased, the path to obtaining custody of Johnny became clearer. Matthew completed the necessary paperwork, and after a few months of legal proceedings, he finally obtained temporary custody. He took Johnny to live with him, determined to give the boy a chance at a better life. Matthew knew this was just the first step on a long journey, but he was ready to face the challenges. Johnny, in turn, began to adjust to his new life, finding security and hope alongside math. To ensure Johnny was well cared for while he worked, Matthew decided to seek help. He knew he needed someone trustworthy, someone who could offer Johnny not just basic care, but also the love and affection he so desperately needed. That's when he thought of Claire Robinson, an old friend of Rachel's. Claire was a kind and warm-hearted woman with a generous spirit and a natural ability to care for others. Matthew remembered how Rachel always spoke of Claire fondly, highlighting her dedication and kindness. He knew she would be the perfect person to help Johnny adjust to his new life. Matthew picked up the phone and called Claire. "Hi Claire, it's Matthew Johnson. It's been a while, hasn't it?" "Matthew, it has been a long time. How are you?" Claire responded with surprise and joy in her voice. "I'm well, thank you. But actually, I wanted to talk to you about something important. I'm taking care of a boy named Johnny. He's been through a lot, and I was wondering if you could help me take care of him. I know it's a big request, but I really trust you." Claire was silent for a moment, taking in the information. "Matthew, of course I would help. But I also have a young daughter, you know." "Yes, I know," said Matthew, smiling. "And I thought it might be good for Johnny to have another child around. He needs a family, Claire. And I can't think of anyone better to help provide that for him." After a brief pause, Claire responded with determination. "I accept. Let's do this. When can I move in?" In the following days, Claire and her daughter, Emily, moved into Matthew's house. The move was exciting for everyone. Johnny, initially shy and somewhat unsure, began to open up as he got used to Claire and Emily's presence. "Johnny, my name is Claire. And this is Emily," Claire said with a warm smile as she helped her daughter unpack. "We're really happy to be here with you." Johnny looked at Claire, still wary, but the kindness in her eyes was undeniable. "Nice to meet you and Emily." Emily, a vibrant and energetic girl, approached Johnny with enthusiasm. "Johnny, want to play with me in the garden? We have a new ball." Johnny hesitated for a moment, but Emily's infectious smile was irresistible. "Okay," he finally said. The days that followed were marked by a growing sense of normalcy and joy in the house. Matthew watched with satisfaction as Claire and Emily became integrated into Johnny's life. Claire had a calming and gentle presence and quickly became a motherly figure for Johnny. "Matthew, you've done an incredible job here," Claire said one evening as they sat in the living room, watching the children play. "Johnny is a wonderful boy. He just needed a bit of stability and love." "Thank you, Claire," Matthew replied, feeling grateful. "I couldn't have done this without you. Seeing Johnny happy and safe brings me a comfort I haven't felt in a long time." Matthew began to realize that with Claire and the children around, he was leaving his dark past behind. The painful memories of Rachel and the accident were still there, but they no longer dominated his thoughts. He began to open up more, talking about his feelings and sharing his hopes and fears with Claire. "You know, Claire," Matthew said one afternoon as they walked through the park with the children, "I never thought I could find happiness again after Rachel. But seeing Johnny smiling and knowing I'm making a difference in his life, it gives me hope." "Matthew, you're an amazing person," Claire replied, squeezing his hand. "And Rachel would be very proud of you. You're giving Johnny a life he could never have dreamed of. And that's something wonderful." The new family dynamic began to solidify. Johnny, once a shy and insecure boy, began to flourish. He laughed more, played enthusiastically, and excelled at school. Emily became his best friend and confidant, and Claire, a motherly figure he had never had. One evening, as Claire was tucking Emily and Johnny into bed, Johnny turned to her and said, "Claire, can I call you Mommy?" Claire felt a lump in her throat and her eyes filled with tears. "Of course, dear. You can call me Mommy." Matthew, standing at the door listening, felt his heart warm. He knew he had made the right choice in bringing Claire and Emily into their lives. The house was finally filled with love and laughter, something he feared he might never experience again. Matthew began to see a future he thought was lost forever after Rachel's death. With Claire, Johnny, and Emily, he had a new family, and that brought him a peace and happiness he hadn't felt in a long time. The daily routine at Matthew's house became a point of stability for everyone. Johnny, who was once a shy and insecure boy, now showed clear signs of happiness and confidence. He laughed and played with Emily, and Claire took care of the children with affection and dedication. The mornings began early with children's laughter and the smell of fresh coffee in the kitchen. Matthew, watching the scene, felt a calmness he hadn't experienced since Rachel's death. "Matthew, would you like some more coffee?" Claire asked one morning as she served pancakes to the children. "Yes, please," Matthew replied, smiling. "These pancakes are incredible, Claire. You really know how to start the day right." "Thank you," said Claire, with a sparkle in her eyes. "But the real secret is the maple syrup. The kids love it." Johnny and Emily laughed together, dunking their pancakes in the syrup with enthusiasm. "More syrup, please," Johnny requested, with a wide smile. The days were full of activities. Claire took Johnny and Emily to school, helped with homework, and organized playtime in the park. Matthew got involved whenever he could, and gradually, the bonds between them all strengthened. One evening, after putting the children to bed, Matthew and Claire sat on the porch, enjoying the fresh air and the tranquil silence. "I don't know how to thank you enough, Claire," said Matthew, looking at the stars. "You've brought so much to Johnny's life and to mine as well." "Matthew, you don't need to thank me," Claire responded softly. "We're all here for each other. That's what matters." There was a growing sense of closeness between them. They shared laughs, faced daily challenges, and took care of each other in a way Matthew hadn't experienced since Rachel. One night, while they were organizing books in the living room, Claire suddenly stopped, holding an old photo album. "Matthew, can I tell you something?" said Claire hesitantly, her eyes avoiding his. "Of course, Claire." "What's going on?" asked Matthew, concerned. Claire took a deep breath and looked at him. I was in love with you in college. You probably don't remember, but I always felt something special for you. But you never noticed." Matthew was silent for a moment, trying to process Claire's words. "You were in love with me? I had no idea. Why didn't you ever tell me?" "I was shy, insecure," explained Claire, with a sad smile. "And you were always surrounded by other girls. I never thought I had a chance." Matthew looked deeply into Claire's eyes, seeing the sincerity and vulnerability there. "Claire, I'm sorry. I was so blind, so caught up in my own world." "There's no need to apologize, Matthew," said Claire, placing a hand gently on his arm. "I just wanted you to know, because now my feelings for you are different. They're based on respect and admiration for the incredible man you've become." Matthew felt a wave of emotions wash over him. Claire's confession was a shock, but also a relief. He had never known about the unrequited love she harbored for him, and now, knowing it brought them even closer. "Claire, I'm surprised. But I also feel that this brings us even closer," said Matthew, sincerely. "Yes, I feel that way too," agreed Claire, smiling. "And I want you to know that I'm here, not because of what I felt in the past, but because of what I feel now. You, Johnny, Emily, all of us together, we're a family." Matthew felt a deep peace hearing these words. He knew that, despite everything, he was finally building something beautiful and lasting. The days that followed were filled with a new lightness. The dynamic between Matthew and Claire changed subtly, but significantly. They trusted each other more, laughed together more, and shared moments of tenderness that previously seemed impossible. One afternoon, as the children played in the garden, Matthew and Claire sat on a bench watching them. "Look at them," said Matthew, pointing to Johnny and Emily. "They're so happy." "They are," agreed Claire, holding Matthew's hand. "And it's thanks to you. You gave Johnny a chance at a better life." "No, Claire," corrected Matthew, gently squeezing her hand. "It's thanks to us. You've been as much a part of this as I have." Claire smiled, feeling the warmth of Matthew's hand in hers. "You know, Matthew, I always dreamed of having a family like this. And now, it feels like my dream is coming true." "Claire, I feel the same," said Matthew, looking into her eyes. "We're building something wonderful here. And I couldn't be happier." Their connection grew stronger every day. Matthew began to see Claire not just as a friend and ally, but as someone with whom he could envision a future together. The feelings were mutual, and the trust between them solidified. One evening, while they were in the kitchen preparing dinner, Claire stopped and looked at Matthew with a twinkle in her eyes. "Matthew, can I ask you something?" "Of course, Claire. Anything," responded Matthew, intrigued. "Do you ever think about what it would be like if we got married?" asked Claire, timidly. Matthew was taken aback by the question, but a smile spread across his face. "To be honest, Claire, yes, I have thought about it. And I think it would be something wonderful." Claire laughed, relieved. "I think so too. It would be perfect for Johnny and Emily, and for us too." "They deserve to have a complete family," said Matthew, placing his hand over hers. "And we deserve to have the happiness we've always sought." Claire's confession and the discussion about a possible marriage forever changed the dynamic between them. They knew they were building something special, something Rachel would have wished for Matthew and Johnny. Months passed swiftly, and life in Matthew's home flourished with joy and harmony. Johnny and Emily had become inseparable, their laughter filling the house in a way Matthew never imagined possible after the tragedy he had suffered. Claire brought a new brightness to his life, and the family routine was well established. However, the shadow of Johnny's temporary custody loomed over them. One day, Matthew received a letter from Child Protective Services. He felt a chill as he opened it, dreading the words that could change everything. Reading the letter, his fears were confirmed. Johnny's temporary custody was about to expire, and he needed to find a permanent solution. "Claire, we need to talk," Matthew said, his expression serious as he held the letter. They were in the kitchen, where Claire was preparing dinner. "What happened, Matthew?" Claire asked, concerned. "Child Protective Services sent a letter. Johnny's temporary custody is about to expire. If we don't find a permanent solution, he might be sent to a foster institution," Matthew explained, passing the letter to Claire. She read the letter quickly, her eyes widening with worry. "This can't happen. Johnny has finally found a home here. We can't let him go." "I know," said Matthew, sighing. "I've been thinking about it, and I think the best way to secure Johnny's future is if we get married." Claire was silent for a moment, processing the proposal. "Are you talking about a marriage of convenience?" "Yes," Matthew replied, looking into her eyes. "It would ensure that Johnny could stay with us. I know it's a big step, but it's the best way to keep our family together and provide Johnny with a stable home." Claire pondered the proposal, her feelings mixed. She knew Matthew was right, but the idea of a marriage of convenience seemed both pragmatic and emotionally complex. "Matthew, are you sure this is the best for all of us?" "I believe it is, Claire," said Matthew firmly. "I care deeply about you and the children. This would give us the stability we need." Claire nodded slowly. "If this is what needs to be done to ensure Johnny's safety, then I'm willing to do it." Matthew felt immense relief, but also knew this decision would change everything. In the following days, they began planning the wedding. It wouldn't be an elaborate ceremony, but a legal union that would secure Johnny's safety. One evening, as they were putting the children to bed, Johnny looked at Matthew curiously. "Matthew, are you and Claire getting married?" Matthew smiled, feeling a surge of emotion. "Yes, Johnny. Claire and I are going to get married." We want to make sure you can stay with us forever." Johnny beamed, feeling secure. "I'm so happy. Claire is the best, and I really like her. And I really like you too." "I really like you too, Johnny," said Matthew, hugging the boy. "We're going to be a family, always together." The wedding day arrived, and it was a simple ceremony, attended only by close friends and the children. Claire wore a simple but elegant dress, and Matthew was in a suit. Emily and Johnny were delighted, holding hands as they watched the ceremony. The officiant began the ceremony, and the words resonated with promises and hope. "We are gathered here today to join Matthew Johnson and Claire Robinson in marriage, not just as a legal commitment but as a promise of love and stability for their families." Matthew and Claire exchanged glances, their hands meeting at the altar. "Claire, I promise to stand by you, to care for you and the children, and to build a life full of love and happiness together," said Matthew, his voice sincere. "Matthew, I promise to support you, to stand by you, and to create a loving home for Johnny and Emily. Together, we can overcome anything," Claire responded, tears in her eyes. After the ceremony, they returned home as an officially united family. The children were radiant with happiness, and the house was filled with laughter and joy. Matthew felt a deep peace knowing that Johnny would be safe and loved. That night, as the children slept, Matthew and Claire sat on the porch, looking up at the starry sky. "We did the right thing," said Matthew, holding Claire's hand. "Johnny is safe, and we have a family." "Yes, we did," Claire agreed, squeezing his hand. "And now, we can look forward to the future with hope." The challenges they faced brought them even closer together, and Claire's confession about her love for Matthew in college further solidified the trust and respect between them. They knew they were on the right path, creating a safe and loving environment for Johnny and Emily. Matthew and Claire's marriage brought a new sense of security and stability for everyone. However, the decision to marry was not made lightly. On the night Matthew proposed, the feelings were intense and emotions ran high. "Claire," Matthew began, his voice serious as they sat on the porch after a long day, "I've been thinking a lot about our situation. Johnny's temporary custody is about to expire, and we need to find a permanent solution." Claire looked at him, recognizing the gravity in his tone. "What do you suggest, Matthew?" "We can't let Johnny go to an institution." Matthew took a deep breath, his hands nervously intertwined. I think the best solution is for us to get married. I know it sounds drastic, but it would ensure that Johnny could stay with us. It's not just for convenience, Claire. It's because I genuinely believe we can build a life together as a family." Claire was silent for a moment, absorbing Matthew's words. She knew he was right, but the idea of getting married was a big step. Still, the bond they had created was strong, and she trusted Matthew. "Matthew," she began, her voice soft but firm, "I understand why you're proposing this, and honestly, I also feel we can make it work. It's not just for Johnny, but for us. I trust you, and I know together we can provide the best for our children." Matthew smiled, relieved. "So, you agree?" "Yes, I agree," said Claire, smiling back. "Let's do this, Matthew. Let's get married and create the family we've always dreamed of." In the following days, the house was bustling with preparations for the wedding. They decided on a simple ceremony, surrounded only by their closest friends, and of course, Johnny and Emily. Matthew and Claire wanted it to be a special day, not just for the formality, but because it would mark the beginning of a new chapter in their lives. On the morning of the wedding, Claire was in the bedroom with Emily, adjusting her dress. Emily looked at her mother with eyes gleaming with admiration. "Mom, you look so beautiful. I'm so happy you're marrying Matthew." Claire smiled, feeling the warmth of her daughter's words. "Thank you, darling. I am very happy too. Matthew is a wonderful man, and together we will be an even stronger family." Meanwhile, Matthew was with Johnny, helping him into his little suit. "Are you ready for today, champ?" Matthew asked, adjusting the boy's tie. "Yes, I am," Johnny responded enthusiastically. "Matthew, I'm really happy that you and Claire are getting married. Does that mean we'll be a real family now?" "Exactly," said Matthew, smiling. "We'll be a real family, and nothing will change that." The ceremony was held in the garden of the house, decorated simply yet elegantly. Close friends were present, and the atmosphere was filled with love and joy. Matthew and Claire stood hand in hand, their eyes locked on each other as the officiant conducted the ceremony. "We are gathered here today to unite Matthew Johnson and Claire Robinson in marriage," the officiant began, his voice firm and solemn. "This union is not just a legal commitment but a promise of love, respect, and mutual support." Matthew looked at Claire, feeling a surge of emotion. "Claire, I promise to be by your side, to care for you and the children, and to build a life full of love and happiness together. You brought light into my life, and I am eager to share every moment with you." Claire squeezed Matthew's hand, her eyes shimmering with tears of joy. "Matthew, I promise to support you, to be by your side, and to create a loving home for Johnny and Emily. Together, we can overcome anything. You are my rock, and I am grateful for every day with you." After the exchange of vows, the officiant declared them husband and wife. Matthew and Claire kissed, sealing their union with a deep gesture of love. The guests applauded, and the children rushed to embrace them. "That was beautiful, Mom," Emily said, hugging Claire tightly. "I'm so happy for all of us." "I am too, darling," Claire replied, stroking her daughter's hair. "We're going to have a wonderful life together." Johnny looked up at Matthew, his eyes full of gratitude. "Thank you, Matthew, for everything." "You don't need to thank me, Johnny," said Matthew, bending down to hug the boy. "We're in this together. We're a family now." After the ceremony, everyone gathered for a small reception. The house was filled with laughter, conversation, and celebration. Matthew felt a deep peace, knowing he had made the right choice. He looked at Claire and the children, feeling complete. That night, after the guests had left and the children were in bed, Matthew and Claire sat on the porch, reflecting on the day. "Today was perfect," said Claire, leaning her head on Matthew's shoulder. "I couldn't be happier." "Me neither," Matthew replied, holding her hand. "I finally feel like I've found what I was looking for. A home, a family, and you." "Matthew, we're just beginning," Claire said, looking into his eyes. "We have a bright future ahead of us, together." Matthew and Claire's marriage brought a new light into everyone's lives. It wasn't just a formality. Over time, they developed a genuine and deep love. The new family adapted well to the new dynamic, and both Johnny and Emily thrived in an environment full of love and security. Shortly after the wedding, the daily routine at Matthew's house began to change in subtle but significant ways. Claire, now officially part of the family, embraced her role with enthusiasm and care that was contagious. Mornings started with her preparing a hearty breakfast for everyone. "Good morning, family," Claire said cheerfully as she served hot pancakes with maple syrup. "Today we have special pancakes. I hope you're hungry." Emily, always the first to arrive at the table, grinned widely. "Mom, I love your pancakes. They're the best." Johnny, still a bit sleepy, sat down next to Emily. "Claire, can I have more syrup?" he asked, his eyes sparkling with joy. "Of course, dear," Claire replied, pouring more syrup on his plate. "How are you feeling today?" "I'm good," Johnny said between bites. "I'm happy." Matthew watched the scene with a satisfied smile. He felt a deep peace seeing his children happy and well cared for. "Claire, you've really transformed this place. Thank you for everything." "We're all in this together, Matthew," Claire replied, placing a gentle hand on his. "And this is just the beginning." The days turned into weeks, and weeks into months. Matthew and Claire faced everyday challenges with unity and understanding. One night, after a long day at work, Matthew found Claire in the kitchen, preparing dinner. He hugged her from behind, feeling the warmth of the love they shared. "You know, Claire," Matthew began softly, "I can't imagine my life without you. You've brought so much happiness to us." Claire smiled, turning to look into Matthew's eyes. "I feel the same, Matthew. Every day with you and the kids is a blessing." They shared a tender kiss, interrupted only by the children's laughter as they ran through the house. Johnny and Emily were engaged in a lively game of hide-and-seek, their giggles filling the house with joy. "You two, come wash your hands for dinner," Claire called out as Johnny and Emily approached, breathless and smiling. "We're coming, Mom," Emily replied, pulling Johnny by the hand. Dinner was always a special time at Matthew's house. Sitting at the table, they shared stories of the day, laughed together, and enjoyed each other's company. "Matthew, guess what happened at school today?" Johnny began excitedly. "I won a prize for my science project." "That's amazing, Johnny," Matthew replied, his voice full of pride. "I'm so proud of you. Keep up the good work." "Congratulations, Johnny," Claire said, smiling. "I knew you could do it." These moments of connection and mutual support became the foundation of the new family. Every day, Matthew felt more confident that they were on the right path. The painful memories of Rachel still existed, but now they were accompanied by new hope and happiness. One night, while the children were in bed, Matthew and Claire sat on the porch, as they often did. The stars shone brightly in the sky, and the gentle sound of crickets created a peaceful atmosphere. "Claire, have you ever thought about how much has changed since we got married?" Matthew asked, his voice full of reflection. "Yes, many times," Claire replied, resting her head on his shoulder. "Everything feels so right, like it was meant to be." "I feel that too," Matthew said, squeezing her hand. "After I lost Rachel, I thought I'd never find happiness again. But with you, Johnny, and Emily, I feel like we have a bright future ahead." "Rachel would be very proud of you, Matthew," Claire said softly. "And I'm sure she's happy knowing you found happiness again." Matthew felt a wave of emotion hearing those words. He knew Claire was right. Rachel had always wanted him to be happy, and now, with Claire by his side, he finally felt he was honoring that wish. The months continued to pass, and life at Matthew's house flourished. They faced challenges together, from small arguments over household chores to more serious issues like the children's education. But in each challenge, Matthew and Claire found strength in each other. Once, Emily had a severe cold, and Claire stayed up nights caring for her. Matthew stayed by Claire's side, supporting her and helping as much as he could. "Claire, go get some rest." "I'll stay with Emily," Matthew said, seeing the exhaustion in her eyes. "No, Matthew." "I want to be here for her," Claire replied, but with a grateful smile. "But thank you for being by my side. We're in this together, remember?" Matthew said, stroking her hair. "You don't have to do everything alone." This partnership and mutual support made the new family dynamic even stronger. Every day, Matthew saw Johnny and Emily flourish, and his relationship with Claire deepened. He knew he had found a true love, built on respect, understanding, and a deep emotional connection. And so, the new family thrived. Matthew began to see a future he thought was lost forever after Rachel's death. With Claire, Johnny, and Emily, he knew they had something precious and lasting. As the months passed, the bonds between Matthew and Claire grew significantly stronger. They became not just partners in daily life, but also confidants and close friends. Daily life in Matthew's house began to flourish with moments of joy, love, and growth. One morning, as Claire prepared breakfast, Matthew walked into the kitchen, still rubbing the sleep from his eyes. "Good morning," he said with a sleepy smile. "It smells wonderful." Claire looked at him, her eyes shining. "Good morning, Matthew. We're having waffles today." Johnny and Emily asked for a special breakfast. Johnny and Emily were already at the table, laughing and chatting animatedly. "Mom, can you put more whipped cream on my waffle?" Emily asked, holding out her plate. "Of course, dear," Claire replied, topping Emily's plate with a generous amount of whipped cream. Matthew sat down at the table, grabbing his cup of coffee. "So, what are the plans for today?" he asked, looking at the children. "We want to go to the park after school," Johnny exclaimed enthusiastically. "Can you come with us, Matthew?" Matthew smiled. "Sure, champ. We'll go to the park after school." As they ate, the conversation flowed naturally, with everyone sharing their plans and expectations for the day. These simple yet significant moments were fundamental in strengthening the family bonds. Later, after dropping the kids off at school, Matthew and Claire returned home to start their daily tasks. As they worked side by side, their partnership became increasingly evident. "Matthew, I was thinking," Claire began, while organizing some papers on the living room table. "We could redecorate the kids' rooms." Johnny and Emily mentioned they'd love a more personalized space. Matthew looked at her, considering the idea. "I think that's a great idea. They deserve a space that's just theirs. Let's plan something special." They spent the afternoon discussing ideas, choosing colors and furniture, and imagining how to make the kids' rooms more cozy and personalized. The interaction was natural and filled with affection, showing how invested they were in Johnny and Emily's happiness. As they worked, Matthew realized how much Claire had changed his life. "Claire, you've really brought a new perspective to me," he said, pausing to look into her eyes. "Before you came, I was stuck in the past. But with you, Johnny, and Emily, I see a future full of possibilities." Claire smiled, touched by Matthew's words. "I feel the same way, Matthew. We're a team, and together we can face anything." Claire's presence in Matthew's life was an anchor that helped him navigate the turbulent waters of his painful memories. She brought lightness and joy, helping him overcome the pain of the past and embrace the present. One afternoon, after a long and exhausting day, Matthew and Claire sat on the couch, watching a movie while the kids played in their room. "I don't know what I'd do without you, Claire," Matthew said, his voice full of sincerity. "You are my rock." Claire held his hand, their fingers intertwined. "Matthew, we're in this together. And no matter what happens, I'll always be here for you." This promise of mutual support was palpable in all aspects of their life. Whether facing small daily challenges or major decisions, Matthew and Claire found strength in each other. On weekends, they went on family outings, exploring parks, museums, and other interesting places in the city. Johnny and Emily loved these adventures, and each outing was an opportunity to create lasting memories. One Saturday, they decided to have a picnic in the park. Claire prepared a basket with sandwiches, fruits, and juices, while Matthew grabbed a soccer ball to play with the kids. "Let's play tag," Emily shouted, running across the grass with Johnny close behind. Matthew and Claire sat on the grass, watching the kids with smiles on their faces. "They are so happy," Matthew said, feeling a sense of fulfillment. "This is everything I've ever wanted." "Me too," Claire replied, leaning on his shoulder. "We're building something wonderful here, Matthew. And this is just the beginning." Time passed, and the family continued to grow stronger. Claire and Matthew faced challenges together, like when Johnny had trouble in school and they worked with his teachers to find a solution. "We're here to help you, Johnny," Matthew said during a serious conversation at the kitchen table. "You can count on us for anything." "Thank you, Matthew." "Thank you, Claire," Johnny replied, feeling loved and supported. These moments of unity and mutual support helped build a solid foundation for the family. Each day, the bonds grew stronger, and Matthew felt more confident in the future they were building together. One day, while they were sitting on the porch, Claire looked at Matthew with a serious but loving expression. "Matthew, we need to talk about something important." "What is it, Claire?" he asked, concerned. "I've been thinking a lot about our future," she began hesitantly. "And I think we need to discuss expanding our family. Matthew was surprised, but not in a negative way. You want to have more children? Yes, Claire said with a shy smile. I think we're ready for that. Johnny and Emily would love to have a brother or sister. And I feel like our family is ready to grow. Matthew felt a wave of emotion. The idea of having more children was something he hadn't considered since Rachel's death, but now, with Claire by his side, it felt like the right thing to do. Claire, I would love to have more children with you, he said, holding her hand. Let's do it. Let's keep building this amazing family. The conversation about the future and the possibility of expanding their family brought a new layer of hope and excitement to their lives. They knew that, together, they could face any challenge and create a home full of love and happiness. Although Matthew's new life was filled with happiness, he was still occasionally haunted by the past. There were nights when he woke up sweating, with vivid memories of the accident that took Rachel's life. He tried to hide his anguish from Claire, but she was perceptive and noticed the pain in his eyes. One night, as they sat on the porch after a long day, Claire noticed that Matthew was especially quiet, lost in thought. Matthew, you seem distant. What's going on? She asked softly, placing her hand over his. Matthew sighed, looking up at the starry sky. Claire, there's something I've been avoiding talking about, but I think it's time you knew. It's about the accident that took Rachel's life. Claire squeezed his hand, encouraging him to continue. I'm here for you, Matthew. You can tell me everything. Matthew took a deep breath, trying to find the words. It was a rainy night. Rachel and I had a fight. About small things, silly things. I was driving and lost control of the car. The accident was quick, brutal. She was pregnant, Claire, and I couldn't do anything to save her. Claire's eyes filled with tears as she listened. Oh, Matthew, I'm so sorry. That must have been horrible for you. It was, Matthew admitted, his voice trembling. I carry that guilt every day. I always wonder if I could have done something different. Claire moved closer to him, wrapping him in a tight embrace. Matthew, it wasn't your fault. Sometimes, things just happen. You couldn't have predicted or prevented that accident. I know rationally, I know that, Matthew said, holding on to her as if she were his anchor. But the pain and the guilt, they never completely go away. Claire pulled back slightly, looking directly into his eyes. Matthew, you don't have to face this alone. I'm here to help you find peace. Rachel wouldn't want you to carry this guilt forever. She would want you to be happy. Matthew felt a wave of relief hearing Claire's words. Do you really think so? Yes, I do, Claire replied firmly. Rachel loved you, and now you have a new chance to build a happy life. And I'll be by your side every step of the way. They sat in silence for a moment, just feeling each other's presence. Finally, Matthew spoke again. Thank you, Claire. You've been my rock. I don't know what I would do without you. Claire smiled, her eyes still glistening with tears. We're in this together, Matthew. Always. From that moment, Matthew began to open up more about his past, sharing painful memories and happy moments of his life with Rachel. Claire listened with compassion, offering words of comfort and support. One afternoon, while organizing some boxes in the attic, Matthew found an old photo album. Look at this, Claire, he said, opening the album. These are pictures from when Rachel and I traveled to Europe. Claire sat down next to him, looking at the photos. She was beautiful, Matthew. You both looked so happy. Yes, we were, Matthew said, with a sad smile. Those were some of the best times of my life. And seeing these photos now, it brings back so many memories. It's important to remember, Claire said softly. But it's also important to move forward. Rachel will always be a part of who you are, and that's a beautiful thing. Matthew nodded, feeling a growing peace. You're right, Claire. Rachel will always be a part of me, But that doesn't mean I can't find happiness again." The following months brought more moments of reflection and healing. Matthew and Claire faced the ghosts of the past together, which only strengthened their bond. They knew that by confronting the painful memories, they were building a more solid and happy future for everyone. One night, as they lay in bed, Matthew turned to Claire. "You know, Claire, I never thought I could feel this way again. You've brought light into my life in a way I never imagined possible." Claire smiled, caressing his face. "And you've brought so much joy to me, Matthew. We're building something wonderful together." "Yes, we are," Matthew said, holding her hand. "And no matter what the future holds, I know we can face it all together." With this new perspective, Matthew began to see his life with more clarity and hope. He was determined to honor Rachel's memory, but also to embrace the present and future with Claire and the children. Each day was a new opportunity to love, grow, and build the family he had always dreamed of. As the months passed, Matthew and Claire's life became an example of love, support, and resilience. They faced challenges, but with each obstacle, they found strength in each other and in their new family. Now, they were ready for a well-deserved break. They decided to spend a week at the beach, a place where they could relax, have fun, and create lasting memories. Matthew drove the car, Claire by his side, and Johnny and Emily in the back seat, excited about their first beach vacation as a complete family. "We're going to build sandcastles, Dad," Johnny exclaimed, clapping his hands. "And swim in the ocean," added Emily, her eyes sparkling with excitement. Matthew smiled, feeling genuine joy seeing the children's happiness. "We're going to do all that and more, I promise." When they arrived at the beach house, they were greeted by the sound of waves and the salty smell of the sea. The house was cozy, with a porch that offered a stunning view of the ocean. They quickly unpacked the car, eager to start their adventures. On the first day, the family spent hours on the beach. Matthew and Claire played soccer with Johnny and Emily, their laughter echoing in the air. "Catch this, Dad," Johnny shouted, kicking the ball with all his might. Matthew ran after the ball, laughing as Claire and Emily cheered. "Great kick, champ. Almost got me." After an exhausting game, they all sat in the sand to rest. Matthew looked around, taking in the moment. Claire was beside him, her hair blowing in the sea breeze, and Johnny and Emily were building a sandcastle together, focused on their task. "This is perfect," Matthew said, turning to Claire. "Seeing everyone so happy. I couldn't ask for more." Claire smiled, intertwining her fingers with Matthew's. "Yes, it's perfect. We're very lucky to have found each other." As the days passed, the family enjoyed every moment. They swam in the ocean, explored tide pools for shells, and took long walks on the beach at sunset. One night, they decided to have a picnic on the beach, bringing blankets, sandwiches, and a bottle of wine for Claire and Matthew. "This is the life," Matthew said, lying on the blanket next to Claire, watching the children run along the shore. "Everything feels so right." "I agree," Claire said, leaning on his shoulder. "Seeing Johnny and Emily so happy, it makes everything worth it." On the last night of their vacation, Matthew decided to do something special. While Claire got the children ready for bed, he set up a small bonfire on the beach and prepared marshmallows for roasting. When everything was ready, he called the family outside. "Surprise," he said, smiling as the children ran excitedly to the bonfire. "Wow, marshmallows!" Emily exclaimed, grabbing a skewer. Claire smiled at Matthew, clearly touched by the gesture. "You thought of everything, didn't you?" "I wanted this last night to be special," Matthew said, handing her a marshmallow skewer. "Thank you for everything, Claire." They sat around the bonfire, the flames dancing as the night went on. As they roasted marshmallows, they shared stories and laughter, savoring every second together. "I'd like to make a toast," Matthew said suddenly, raising a glass of juice. "To my family. Claire, Johnny, Emily, you've brought new life to me. I'm grateful for each one of you." May we have many more moments like this. To our family, everyone repeated, raising their glasses. Matthew looked at Claire, their eyes meeting. I love you, he said, without hesitation. I love you too, Claire replied, her eyes shining with emotion. As the bonfire crackled and the children dozed off from exhaustion, Matthew and Claire sat in silence, watching the ocean. He felt a deep peace, something he hadn't felt in a long time. The pain of the past hadn't completely disappeared, but now it was accompanied by a sense of fulfillment and hope. The next morning, as they prepared to head home, Matthew looked at the beach one last time. He knew this trip had marked the beginning of a new phase in their lives. On the drive back, Johnny and Emily slept in the back seat, exhausted and happy. Claire held Matthew's hand, offering a smile that spoke more than words. It was a wonderful week, she said softly. I've never felt so happy. Neither have I, Matthew replied, squeezing her hand. And this is just the beginning. We have a bright future ahead of us. Back to their routine, Matthew, Claire, Johnny, and Emily continued to cultivate the love and happiness they discovered at the beach. They faced challenges, but always with the certainty that, together, they could overcome anything. The trip to the beach was a symbol of their new beginning, and with it, Matthew finally found the peace and happiness he had long sought.
So, if you're not subscribed yet, click on the subscribe button below and join our community. Thank you for your support and see you in the next videos.